It says where you're from, sort of what you do professionally, what you're bringing to the table here, what you might be most interested in. And let's do one thing you're grateful for today.
Happy birthday back in the back of the room.
Oh, is there a birthday? Pamela. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Pamela.
Nice, well spotted, Robert. So I'm Andy Davis. I'm a data analyst. I work for Greater Oregon Behavioral Health Incorporated. I have some public administration and policy analysis background, and I live in Astoria. Today I'm grateful we don't have rain, which is awesome. I'm glad to see the sun. Ron, do you want
Ron Weber, representing the Jewel Elsie area, and the grateful thing. I moved out here from Denver, and I really like how green it is. It's pretty green. I like that part of life. And what to bring to this is trying to just figure out, well, like I said at our last meeting Tuesday, was to figure out your need specifically, lay it out for me, so I can run with it. And that's what I was trying to glean out of that stuff.
Thank you.
Theodore Lundy, I go by Todd. I'm an architect. My experiences included planning as well as building design and management of medical facilities for Kaiser Permanente. And the thing that made me happy today was that I was able to get out of bed.
Good start.
Hey, I'm Gail Henriksen. I'm the Community Development Director for Clatsop County, and I would just be very grateful if everybody signs in before they leave. Thank you.
Cheryl Johnson, I live out in Brownsmead, and so I'm the rep from the Northeast CAC. I'm a retired library media specialist, and I had the great pleasure of working on the original one of these back in the 70s when we wrote it. So it's interesting now to come around and be able to contribute to updating it.
My name is Jim Allegria. I'm semi-retired from the U.S. Forest Service. My background is a forest statistician, and I still do international consulting as well as some other stuff on the side.
And sorry, Jim, you just came back from a vacation. Can
Yes.
you tell us where you went?
Oh, we went to Belgium. I went to Liberia for work, and then I met my wife in Belgium, and we spent a full week there. It was very nice. We had never been to Belgium before, so it was good.
Great, thank you.
I'm Jim Coughlin. I'm a retired general contractor. I have lived the last 26 years here in the Lewis and Clark area. And starting in the early 90s, I volunteered to be on several state boards and committees. So my background is a little bit on the environmental side. I am an educated as an oceanographer. But I'm pleased today that I can help the county that I live in accomplish its goals.
Harold Gable, I'm a retired dentist, also partly retired, I should say. I run the sharpening dock, which is worldwide as far as sharpening for a bunch of scissors as well as repair cafe. I am glad we're talking about agriculture today. I ran a ranch outside of Lane County for 10 years. I had 60 acres, cattle, sheep, and hogs, and when we get to that part today, I want you to remember that agriculture, they're the only ones that buy retail and sell wholesale.
Yeah. And I'm Jan Mitchell. Sorry I'm late. I forgot where we were going. I am a retired city planner from a county or a city with too many people that state to the south of us. I've been here for 25 years. I'm very thankful that I moved here. It was one of the best decisions in my life. I've been on both the City of Astoria Planning Commission and the County Planning Commission, and I served 8 years on the State Heritage Commission. So my background is in long-range planning and social work, because I once did that, and all that kind of stuff.
What What are you grateful for today?
I am very grateful today that I got over the flu. I've had the flu for 4 days.
Wow.
Yes.
And I'm Pat Corcoran. I live in Astoria since 2003. I work for Oregon State University Extension Service. Coastal Hazards is my area. I also have worked on a couple of task forces at the county planning for North Clatsop Plains, North Clatsop Plains, and the Tsunami Hazard Overlay Zone. So I guess I bring the hazards perspective and a background with OSU and land use planning in my younger days. And I'm grateful today that 1 year ago my sciatica was really bad, and it was really bad, and now it's not. And so I'm feeling like I'm grateful to be back to almost normal.
I'm Robert Strickland. I live on Clatsop Plains. I do not live in Warrington, for which I'm grateful. We live on land there that my parents acquired January of 1950. But that does not make me a local. And I am grateful for, aside from not living in Warrington, that the little asters that are the nectar flower for silver spots are in bloom on Clatsop Plains, despite all the years of disruption to them. You know, and I think that's phenomenal to see one of these old natural asters that has survived all the tillage and disruption and glyphosates and whatever else.
Are they currently blooming to
They're
see?
today, this day, they're in bloom, and it just not many.
They're blooming in Alderbrook too.
But the fact that they're in bloom, I think, is a hope for the globe.
Are there any silver spot populations there?
Hell no. No, that's a longer story. But there are violets in equally small numbers. So there's still signs of why they were there. Yep.
Okay, thank you all. Question to the members of the public. Could you hear us all right in general?
Try to project if you can.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's try to keep in mind that the fan is on and things, so it might be a little harder today. Plus, we don't have microphones or anything today to work with. So could I ask for the members of the public to just briefly introduce yourselves as well so that we know who's here and maybe what you might be interested in as far as our discussion? Sure.
I'm Mike Seppa, and I'm, I guess, a long-time Clatsop County resident. My Finnish grandparents moved to the Lithgow Valley in 1902. Been on our current farm since 1917, and retired dairy farmer. After doing agriculture from Oregon State in 62, and other than Army, I've been farming ever since. Chairman of Clatsop Soil and Water also.
For about how many years?
30 years in the Army.
For how many years on Clatsop Soil and Water Conservation District Chair?
I'm going on 19.
I'm Chris Farrar. I live in Astoria. I'm a relative newcomer. I've been here since 2011. And, I'm retired from U.S. Geological Survey, where I worked in geology and hydrology for 37 years. And I currently serve with Mike on the Clatsop Soil and Water Conservation Board, as well as other boards, including the County Planning Commission. And I'm grateful to see such a large number of diverse citizens of our county, so dedicated and willing to sit around the table and deal with this big project we're all working on. It's really heartening to see people put out that level of engagement and care for the future. Thank you.
Echo that. That's
That's good, that's well said. I'm Leanne Thompson, I'm the District 5 Commissioner of Clatsop County in my second term in that role. I served with Jan and Robert on the Planning Commission before that for Clatsop County, and was liaison to the Soil and Water District. I come from farmers, and I live between the woods and the ocean. And so the idea that we're trying to do good now and in the future so that people can have their heart in this place and be safe and flourish here. And all of you, I think, are supporting that and developing the structure so that good choices will be made to assure that. And I'm grateful that we have a new county manager and that Gail brought chocolate.
I'm Susanna Gladwin. I have a farm in Jewel, and I'm part-time in Astoria. I came to Jewel before the comprehensive plan was implemented in '71, and I was on the early citizens input board when it was being implemented, and I followed it ever since. So I was on the planning commission term with Leanne, and I'm a farmer, and I'm totally worried about climate change, and protecting our trees is a place of carbon capture, because they keep saying Northwest forests are really significant forests, but I see them so often being decimated, and that concerns me. That's all.
My name is Diane Jetty. I'm a licensed EMT in the state of Oregon. I'm a CERT member out at LC Fire and Rescue. I'm a retired realtor. And I'm grateful for my friends.
I'm Misty Metcalf-Boger. I am the manager at Clatsop Soil and Water Conservation District, and I have the privilege of growing up in Brownsmead, and I now live in Swenson, and I had no idea that growing up there would prepare me for the job I have now.
You moved out west from Brownsville to Swenson.
Almost.
My name's Larry Nelson, and my wife Nancy and I own a small certified organic farm out in the Wilson Park Valley. I've been there for 20-some years, and we grow and sell produce mostly to the local restaurants, and we have concern seeing what could be potentially good farmland covered by houses. That's just doesn't make sense. So that's why we're
How large is your farm, Larry?
it's small. It's we're 3.5 acres, but you know that's a segment of agriculture, the only segment of agriculture that is growing not only in the state of Oregon but across the country. You know, large farms are shrinking and becoming fewer and fewer every year. They're being bought out by mega farms, but yet small farms under 10 acres, are growing across the country. And it's because I think that there is a means for people to get into farming without land has gotten so expensive. You can't buy a large farm. I'm here to hear what you guys have to say.
I'm Nancy Verberg. And I live and work in Astoria. I'm a coastal planner at the Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force, which is down a lot. And I'm grateful for the change of seasons.
I'm Ellen McDonald. I'm a journalist, and I think that land use planning is very integral to the quality of life, and I like to be, I'm very grateful for my partner.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I really appreciate your sentiments.
I'm Lisa Phipps. I'm the North Coast Regional Representative for the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development, and it is my privilege to serve Clatsop County, Lincoln County, Solomon, and Columbia County. And I'm here to support you and the community development staff and recover for the community. And I'm grateful to be here.
Okay, thank you all for the introductions. It's nice to meet everyone, new faces and old faces here. I will say, since everybody was talking about their farm life too, my parents had a grass-fed organic Angus farm with 126 acres that I grew up working on, and my grandparents were soybean and wheat farmers, all from Indiana. So it's a little different out here, but I feel like this is also material that's near and dear to my heart. So I appreciate hearing so many farmers in the room. It's fun to be in that crowd. Okay, so the first thing we should do is go through the meeting summary for last meeting. Everyone should have gotten that in the mail, but members of the committee, do you have any additions, corrections, deletions, comments about the summary for the last meeting? Or did you find it entirely accurate?
Entirely accurate in entirety.
Andy, where in this packet that I'm looking at are you referring to the very top?
No, and the
So this
in
one,
that cute little mailer.
yeah, this one was in the mailed manila.
That already
envelopes.
came. Yep.
Yep.
There is a lot of paper.
That's and then right behind it the next
I'm not
two
sure I'm
pages.
going to be strong enough in a year to carry all this.
Like
You'll be stronger in a year.
Yeah.
like
Okay.
picking up a calf every day. There you go.
I found the notes to be accurate.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yes.
Pat, do you want us to give you a moment to go through them, or?
No, I've gone through them once. I'm just checking
Okay.
to see if I missed something that I said that was particularly stupid. No, I don't see anything.
Okay.
No, it wasn't particularly stupid.
Not too bad.
So hearing no objections to the comments of the meeting summary, I'm going to say we've accepted that and move on to the reports from the liaisons from the sub areas of the county. Let's see, let's start on this side.
I have an easy one because we
Yes, sir.
we chose not to meet.
Okay.
So and I'm the north or the whatever it's called, the Clatsop Plains. Yeah. Clatsop Plains. Passed.
So we look forward to your report next month.
Oh
Thank you,
yeah,
Rob.
it'll be doubly interesting.
Okay. Jim, are you next?
I
Geographically,
we actually haven't had our meeting yet this month.
Okay.
So we're kind of even less to say than farther down the table.
Thank you. Cheryl?
What group is that, Jim?
Lewis and Clark.
Okay.
And do you expect Andrea to be here next? Are you two switching off?
We're been switching off.
Okay. Thank you. Cheryl?
I'm the representative from Northeast CAC. We met on
September 5th.
5th. Good. I had it. I had it about 15th or 5th. Thank you. So we're sort of Brownsmead, Swenson. A lot of discussion about dikes and tide gates, drainage. We did talk about climate change. There's much concern out there for that. Briefly talked about transportation. Because we're so rural, there is a lack of transportation to health care and emergency evacuation also were concerns. Housing, there was actually a fellow who who showed up and talked to us about lack of affordable housing and said that in our area there is currently one house on the market that is at or below $300,000, and he finds that to be unacceptable, and he was suggesting there was a piece that was zoned as one residence, and he was requesting that it be able to divide it into 4 residences. So that eternal continuing issue of affordable housing. Out of our group of 5, there are 2 hardcore farmers. Dirk Rohn is a dairy farmer, second generation dairy farmer, so he's sort of at the big end, a commercial end of farming. And then Kelly
and her husband are fairly new to the community, and they own a small organic farm called Spring Up Farms, and are making a living doing organic on their property and selling at Sunday market. So sort of old school and new school, sort of large and small. One of the issues that came up, Kelly, who's dynamite, not only reads all the packets, but is doing other research, and our group is considering writing findings, which was a new concept to me. So as we work through each of these, Northeast CACs may write findings.
So findings to contribute. So the existing Goal 3 has findings in it to replace those, to augment them, both?
We haven't done it yet. We're making it up as we go along, but I think in addition to, not instead of.
Okay.
So.
And you said that there was significant concern about climate change in your meeting. Do you mind elaborating on what issues? I mean, I have some guesses about what people might be worried about in your area, but what issues in your geographic area?
Water level, for instance, I'm in Brownsmead, and Brownsmead is diked, and the majority of Brownsmead is actually below water level right now, and so as that changes over time, there will be less, and I mean, at some point in time, there will be less and less property available for agriculture because it's more underwater than it is now.
And you can't farm on the side of the hill, so it's being constricted. The
Yeah.
actual geography, yep.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yep. I represent the Southwest Coastal Group. It's Arch Cape and Falcon Cove, south of Seaside, south of Cannon Beach, I should say. We met on the 11th, and we had 3 observations that I want to convey, and then we passed some resolutions that were kind of aspirational objectives for planning as part of Goal 2. First point was that in the previous meeting I mentioned that we had voted to recommend that there be a delay in permitting, and it was brought up that this was so that individuals, neighbors, could get a chance to see what was going on around them and respond to the county if they felt that there was something that the applicant may have not conveyed to the county. This did not intend to include interior changes. So type 1 reviews would still continue for interior changes, but changes to the exterior of buildings in a residential area should have this 1-week delay where they're posted on the internet and on the website and allowed for people to respond. The only exception to the interior ones was pointed out is that if somebody goes in for a permit to change a bunch of rooms in a house to bedrooms with a dedicated bath, one would indicate that or think that it's probably going to be for some kind of short-term rental, and that should be made. The neighbors should be made aware of that. Second was that Charles Dice, our chairman, wished that the county would have a way to forecast and restrict development in rural communities commensurate to the capacity of local water and sewer districts. They're not expandable forever, and they need to be in the loop when planning for development in rural districts.
Todd, was that for current build out or for potential capacity? You know.
Well, if it's already zoned to be a home site, you can't really stop that.
Sure.
But I would think it was for planning, so zoning, future zoning.
Okay.
The capacity of the sewer and water district is a fundamental thing. In the past, they've been able to limit permits, and I suppose that can still happen. I don't know why it wouldn't. but he wanted to make that case, so there it is.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So, for example, the Falcon Cove Water District has to sign off on all the new development that's coming in before we issue our permit.
Good.
So are they not tracking that as they're signing off on permits for water connections?
You know, he's on the water board.
I know.
Yeah, so he should know how that's working. And I just took it that he knew what was going on and that this was a big issue, but apparently if that's going on, and I suspect
Those
the
are two
same.
different areas, Arch Cape and Falcon Cove,
They are different. They're different communities.
and different water boards.
Yes, yes. The Arch Cape, I think, has also had the capacity to limit development, but I don't know that's the case. Is it?
There's no moratorium.
No.
No.
There was for years.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get on with this then.
Sorry.
Okay. The group wants to limit short-term rentals in some way similar to Cannon Beach. And it was pointed out by Leanne that when we tried to do that before down there, homeowners that were renting short-term rentals threatened lawsuit, and that kind of stopped that process. But other communities have done it, and I think that there must be a way that we could do it. It's the foremost issue for that community. Short-term rental is driving a lot of consternation.
So Todd, just to clarify, that you're not suggesting a mechanism there, you're just desiring that as a group.
Well, the group has, in the past, suggested mechanisms which were not approved by the Planning Commission,
Okay.
such as limiting short-term permits to those that already have them, and they're not transferable upon sale unless to a family member, that kind of a thing. And that raised a lot of hackles among investors. Not people that live there, of course, they're very happy with it. But
Excuse me, is it, Gail, do you think it's an issue of incorporated areas and unincorporated areas in terms of ability to set those boundaries?
No.
Those standards? Okay. So the water districts or the sewer districts could do that if they have the...
Limit short-term rentals?
no, it would have to be something else. It'd have to be some other, planning, the county would have to
Right.
do that.
So the
But we are talking about short-term rentals.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
so
are.
you're
Yeah,
talking,
okay.
you're talking about a different policy countywide
No, these are two
for
separate,
unincorporated areas.
there are two separate points I made.
Okay.
Dice's point was that he wants to limit development in, within the capacity of the water and sewer district. End of
Okay.
point.
End of point, okay.
Okay, second point is that.
Is there a sewer district down there?
Yes, that they have a sewer district. I don't know if.
Arch Cape does, but
Arch
not
Cape-
Falcon Cove.
Falcon Cove is on septic. Now, we had 7 passed resolutions. They're very brief, so don't get scared. The first was, and these are aspirational, so they're not very specific. Supporting documents should be accessible by hyperlink or other user-friendly method, but not necessarily including text in the comprehensive plan. This big heavy stuff that we're getting. Existing trees and wetlands are to be conserved, period. Planning and zoning are to consider intensity of use, quality of life, neighborhood character, and protection of views. These are all past resolutions. The term commercial activity should be specifically defined. That had to do with whether short-term rentals were commercial activity or residential. That's an issue. County, through comprehensive plan, is to establish a rule by which to enforce view protection. There was one particular individual that was very concerned about view protection, but the whole group is. I've been involved with him before for years. That's a big issue. And that's a hard one, because, that's a hard one. The county, through comprehensive plan, is to establish a rule by which to enforce view protection. I got that one. Planning and zoning must consider economic impact on infrastructure and sources of revenue needed to fulfill community needs. This had to do with the fact that the district pays an enormous amount, it's a lot, in taxes to the county, and gets a very small amount back in terms of road maintenance, flood control, that kind of thing. And the group thinks that some of that kind of expense should be considered support of tourism, which is what the 70% of that money goes to, isn't it? 70%? Yeah.
70% of what?
70% of the
room tax.
taxes, of room taxes goes to promote tourism. And maintenance of roads, maintenance of drainage. You're shaking your head. But these are things that the tourists are using and driving up the cost on, and the people down there are suffering from a result of that.
South County is supposed to support the poor people of North County, though. That
Australia feels the same way about that.
There's always been a disproportionate property tax paid down there, and it's part of the distribution of wealth.
No, that's really very good. But but we're not talking about property tax. We're talking about room tax, the short-term rental tax.
And that the Rental Association of Oregon, or whatever it's called, is very adamant about not. A lot of communities want to do exactly what you're suggesting because it seems like a good idea. It's harder than I would have guessed.
Oh, okay.
But anyway.
Yes.
But anyway, there it is.
But there
and
are
there's
lots
one
of
more.
folks aligned.
Yes.
Could I ask for, sorry, was it environmental and economic impact on the last point?
No, the last point is primarily infrastructure of public right-of-way, sewers, not sewer, but drainage. Those mainly it's roads and drainage are the things they're most concerned with. Finally, the economic impact of all commercial activity, including short-term rentals. Individual communities have unique conditions and attributes. This should be recognized in the comprehensive plan. I think the point of that was to try to get the term short-term rentals into the same sentence as commercial activity. So there you have it.
Can I have a...
That's our group.
Okay, thank
you. You can keep that.
Is there a way to do parallel play of, I think it was kind of a throwaway that, gee, if we've said you are zoned to do something, go ahead and do it, whether or not it makes a lick of sense. That the fact that maybe they got the go-ahead to, because there were 4 gallons of flow at some point in time, that the water availability changes.
Yes.
And I presume it's not increasing greatly.
No, I don't think it's
So maybe while you say, sure, good people, you're welcome to go ahead and do something stupid, but acknowledge that you really still have a problem on sewage and water that we're going to go ahead and try and solve by toilets that don't go into a septic system, or water that gets brought in jugs from the springs, or that you can go ahead and address things rationally while accepting the irrationality of, we told you 40 years ago that you could build here.
Yeah, that's I think I was trying to make a point that a resident that lives there every day of the year uses as much water as a visitor who the rules are down there, you can only have one visitor a week. And most of those are 2-3 day weekend kinds of things. So I made the point that they don't use as much water and sewer as the people that live there all the time. And I was slapped down by my colleagues, especially Charles, who's on the water district, and he says that no, that doesn't pan out. Short-term rentals use more water and sewer than do residents.
Because residents know how scarce it is.
I don't know the because part, but
Yeah, I mean, was he clear on day to day? I can see that being true, but if these vacation rentals are occupied only 2 to 3 days a year,
a week.
that's still days a week.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Is that still true? You know what I mean?
Well, that was-
day to day. There's no doubt. I think that's.
well, you guys are in water districts back there. Do you see that? You don't have short-term rental problems, though.
So what we see in the neighborhoods, if I can offer some discussion, there is a density to the transient occupancy. There may be 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people who live there full time, but when the transient occupancy comes in, it's often 4 or 5 cars, with 2 or 3 people per car. So there's a huge load, there's a spike, which we know is bad for septic systems. And just to be clear, it's Falcon Cove Beach, because Falcon Cove is in Tillamook County, and Cove Beach is in Clatsop County. So it's the Falcon Cove Beach area that you're describing. And that's why the load is so high, because of the population spike.
That's in the report.
Gail, so Todd gave you notes. Are staff taking notes at the community meetings as well?
Yes.
Okay. So for example, you have Cheryl's group's input already in some capacity. Okay, thank you. Ron?
Yes. We had our biggest outturn this far. We had 4 folks show up, and I just kept track of their concerns right off the bat, was to somehow get this, I'm not positive who does this, to get the zoning chart cleaned up so that things that are on there are correct, things that have been excluded or not. I'm not sure how far that goes.
Ron, what's your area?
I'm
Where are
sorry,
you?
Jewel Elsie.
Thank you. Ron, can you be louder?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Let's see. Requirements need to be looked up. There was the concern between the rural and the urban areas for wetland use, and to monitor more enforcement of that through whatever means that entails.
Okay.
And the convergence for others, here we go, to create more residential property, and then an ability to, Herb was sitting right beside me, how to figure out how to get 5 acres of timber and get a couple acres for residents. I'm not sure.
So you want to expand housing?
Yeah,
Okay.
subdivide something.
Expand housing in the area?
Yeah, because it's a need.
Is that, Ron, is your sense also, so Cheryl shared that there was that was cost driven in her area, that there was one house that was under 300,000.
Okay.
Is that a similar issue in your area? That
what
it's
could be
cost?
done is manufactured homes.
Well, I'm just saying, so what's driving the concern? Do you have a sense the population's growing and more people want to live there, or is it that the housing that's there is not affordable, or
The
some
housing that
combination?
there is aged
Okay.
and needs to be updated and replaced and upgraded, and then there's another need there for finances to do that, which is in place. I pursued that pretty much. It's up pretty good.
Could I interrupt again? So is it population, is it demand driven, or is it people who already live there wanting to kind of grow the economy there?
Demand driven.
Demand driven. There's people who want to move in.
We've got our new deputy sheriff finally, and he needs a place, and that's going to be a struggle with his 5 kids. So that's historical for us.
I was at the first meeting there in Jewel, and the concern was water, adequacy of water, which sounds sort of ironic considering it's right next to the river. But was that something that came up in conjunction with the need for more housing?
No. No. I do know it's a problem because I've heard horror stories about it. I mean, it's right by the river, and they drill a well, God must be deep and can't find water. I don't know how that works out.
It's strange.
Back to traffic, that Highway 26 right through there is talking about turnouts, safe turnouts, double yellow lines, reduce speed at certain locations, please, and turnouts. A couple turnouts would be wonderful, like 103 to 26 right there, for somebody else. Yeah. Herb lives down on the end of Tweedle, brought this up, and there's a hemp farm down by his place, and he was under the segue into climate stuff. So his morning is based on getting up and smelling this smell of the hemp farm, which smells horrible, he says. And then which got into talking about the climate change, and he brought up some really good points because these folks that come out here are not educated on they just go into the woods and go camping, and they don't know which part of the year not to do that. And we're talking about suggestion more signs, those nice signs and locations where that could happen. To educate more Smoky Bears, I don't know how that goes. And being with the fire department in Elsie, it was the fire prevention week coming up, and I was just trying to brainstorm what kind of things we could, even more things. But the problem is not the people that live there that's, I don't think, that's the problem. It's the people that come in. And then you get the homeless, and you get whoever moves out there into where it goes, to not start fires in August.
So that was primarily a fire concern.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, which led into the climate change. Sure. So once that goes, everything else is kind of messed up.
I'd heard that 100 years or so ago that hops grew in that area and are related to hemp. As far as and just I know there are big hop areas elsewhere, but as far as local, anybody growing hops in your neck of the woods?
Never.
Yeah, do you think that'd bother your same neighbors?
Very.
Yeah.
I have a question that might have been one of your first things you said in that. Were you saying that there's kind of a differential treatment for converting wetlands for city uses versus rural uses? Like people in the rural areas couldn't do it, but in the urban areas it was done. Okay.
That was brought up. I'm glad you asked because I specifically wrote those two down.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I got radios for fire prevention.
For quick response, probably.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. We are taking care of that through our funding. Any thoughts, questions, or concerns?
I think we interrupted you with them while you were going.
No, I just had to follow this guy. This guy was great.
Short-term rentals weren't a problem up in LC Jewel?
No, and I've only heard of 2 Airbnbs. I was like, I don't want the tax problem, but
we'll squeeze our tape and they'll head up to you. Okay, so thank you all for the presentations. The next for us, and we're a couple minutes past. I apologize, Misty, but we're hoping for your presentation from the Clatsop Soil and Water Conservation District.
Okay, I'll kind of just speak right here so I can cover everybody.
That's great.
Hopefully you'll stare at the...
Yeah. Can everybody see the screen? Do you want me to turn the lights off?
Okay, and I'll just let you know when to click forward. So I'm Misty from the Clatsop Soil and Water District. I've been managing there since 2001 and been a resident of this county since '76. So we can go ahead and go to the next one. There are 45 soil and water conservation districts in the state of Oregon, And on this map here, the green ones are your ones that have a permanent tax base. There are 13 districts that have a permanent tax base. And you're going to see later why I mention this, because this kind of affects what we can do. Go ahead.
We don't.
Correct.
We don't.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Yeah, we kind of stick out there. Our counterparts beside us were able to obtain tax bases. Columbia, the 2007 storm helped Columbia Soil and Water obtain theirs. Their voters saw that it was very important. They had some big disasters up there and saw what the Soil and Water District could do. We're kind of a big vessel that can be used if you want it to use it. And then in Tillamook County, the fishermen and dairymen kind of rattled together and they got theirs passed for their area. So we rose out of the Dust Bowl. Basically during that time it became clear that we needed to do something, or the government needed to do something to conserve soil and natural resources. So President Franklin D. Roosevelt, he passed the Soil Conservation Act, which established Soil Conservation Service within the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And at first it was assumed that the federal government could manage the whole program. But then it was soon realized that they needed local input to address local concerns and priorities, and that not one size fits the whole United States. So, Oregon enacted the Soil Conservation District laws that were given to them and asked by the federal government for them to put in place. They were given the laws in 1937, and Oregon decided in 1939 to put these laws in place that would allow for the formation of conservation districts. So, believe it or not, the first one that hopped on the gun was South Tillamook County, the first one to form in Oregon, and in 1940, Mechanicsum formed a soil and water conservation district. They were the second in the state of Oregon. And theirs was formed to address flooding issues. They became inactive after World War II. And then Warrenton Dunes was your second, or Clatsic Plains, I should say, your second soil and water district to form in the state of Oregon, and that was formed mainly to address the eroding dune issue and stabilizing those dunes, and that's kind of why we have the Peter Iredale Road today to enjoy, to drive out to the beach. In 1964, the Clatsic Soil and Water District was formed, and we had coverage for all the area in Clatsic County except for Mechanicsum and Warrenton. Go ahead.
Can I ask is there a difference between the SWCD and the SCDs for the other
So in 1963, the federal government added "and water" to our name.
Okay.
Because we had been dealing with water, natural resources the whole time, and they decided to tidy it up. So we became soil conservation districts, then soil and water conservation districts, to make it a little longer. Most people fall asleep before I get the whole title out. Or they ask me, "What did you say?" afterwards. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So later, we consolidated with those existing districts in 1972 to provide coverage to the whole county. And there at the bottom of that slide is the names of the families that worked together to make it happen. These are founders and directors. And if you look up in the statute what it takes to form a district, it's pretty clear that these people came together in agreement to get it done. Because I tell you, when I read it, I would not want to go through that process. And somebody went through, those people did it. So we can thank them for giving us this vessel. Let's go to the next slide. So who are we? We are here for farms, fish, and forestry. We are considered a special district, a political subdivision of the state government. We have 7 directors elected by county voters, and 5 of those represent zoned areas, and 2 of them are at-large members of the county to provide a diverse set of landowners there, or occupiers. We are non-regulatory, and we operate under ORS 568.
On the non-regulatory, does the area of the Warrenton Dunes Conservation District still have some regulatory power
They have a land use law regulation, which was the first of its kind in the state of Oregon, and as of '85 was the only one. We used to get notifications for that area. Then when everything went to electronics, we stopped getting those electronic notifications from the county. But yes, the power from Warrenton Dunes passed to Clatsop Soil and Water to regulate development across a certain line, which I have at the office, but I don't have here today, of those dunes. As far as I know, that has been conserved.
Yes.
But that has always been something that I've wanted to follow up on. And you'll see why as I keep going why I can't do a lot of things that I love to do. But yes, there is a land use regulation there that we can respond on, and our input is considered the same as a neighboring landowner. Okay, so go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So some of our privileges. We've been ran by volunteers, and it became clear that we were doing good things for the environment and the economy, but our operations funding was a big need and was lacking. So we've been given some certain privileges. In '81, we were blessed with the authority to secure a permanent tax rate, and then later to issue general obligation bonds, and we can hold conservation easements. Those are three great privileges. Our district hasn't taken advantage of any of those as of yet.
Can you give some background on why, say, you haven't decided to have a tax rate, for example?
We did research, and one of the main reasons at the time of the research, the county was in compression, and seeing the history of our college and jails not being passed so many times, that's a lot of money to put out for it not to go through. And when you have little money and you're kind of gauging your voters and what they'll pass, being in compression just didn't sound like a good time to try and do that. Also, we had, out of the 7 board of directors, we had one at the time that he said, if you can sell me, then, and so we felt we couldn't move forward until we had all 7 of us in agreement, because that could topple everything. So we're continuing to work towards that. That's our main goal, but we'll see when it will be reached or attained.
So how do you acquire funding right now? How do you fund your operations?
Through grants, and so we'll keep going. Okay, I'm sorry. Probably maybe I should have just cut to the point, right? According to statute, why we're here, this is what the state of Oregon says, is this wonderful long phrase, which I could read to you, but I'm sure you can read it in your own time, and it's a pretty neat one to have. If we could do all that, that would be pretty cool. Yeah. And we hope to. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. How they say we can do that is, these are some of the privilege, or some of our powers, so to say, that we have that we can do. Securing surveys and research for soil erosion, and those items listed there. And that is all defined in the ORS 568-550. If you ever want a good read on our powers, I'm going to kind of give you the short version. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We can conduct demonstrational projects, carry out preventative control measures, enter into written agreements to furnish financial aid or other aid on lands within the district upon consent of the landowner and occupier for the purpose of agriculture, forestry, water management, ecosystem health, invasive species, alternative and renewable energy, air quality, animal waste, nutrient management, forestry, wildfire planning.
That bit that you were just reading is in the ORS?
It is.
Okay.
It's actually quite longer.
Okay.
So ORS 568-550, you can find the total description. We can make available equipment, fertilizer, seeds, seedlings, and other materials to landowners. We we can develop plans for conservation of soil resources, and we can conduct outreach and educational activities for conservation.
What about water quality? I don't see that listed here.
Water quality is a
Is
big
part of
part of that,
Okay.
because sediment and erosion would tend to lead to.
And what about chemical?
That would be DEQ.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of our captains, so the Soil and Water Conservation Commission, they decide if we exist or not. ODA oversees us. OWEB is in charge of our funding, the grant funding that we applied for from the state.
So are they the 501c3 or are you as well?
No 501c3.
Okay,
They are not either. They're state government.
got it.
Political subdivision of state government.
Thank you.
Special districts oversee special districts, which we are. OECD, they're the ones that lobby for us at the state level, and the NACD lobbies for us at the federal level. So they're our captains. And go ahead and go forward. So,
About what percent of your income comes from the special district? Like, at the time,
we get no
You
income.
have the authority, but you don't have.
Exactly. Right. Nothing comes from them. They just oversee and make sure that we're doing everything right, and we have to follow their rules and laws to continue to operate. So this is kind of a big, valuable vessel that I just threw out there that folks in our county went to a lot of work to put in place for us. But how do we do all that when we really don't even have a boat yet? So funding sets our course, and volunteers have kept us going. A contribution from our county enables us to apply for the state grants. So we have to have some sort of funding to match, open our doors, and every 2 years we can apply for the state grants from Oregon Department of Agriculture and OWEB.
Are these just blanket grants for overhead costs?
No,
Okay.
that is not allowed.
These are special project grants?
These have strings attached, very strict strings. So Senate Bill 1010 is what created this funding source. And Senate Bill 1010 was designed to control water pollution and soil erosion from ag activities to meet water quality standards. And they realized soil and water conservation districts, we can use them around the state to implement this plan. And that's where this funding comes from.
Does the county hand you any funding currently?
They do. They contribute $6,000 to us once a year.
Yeah.
And that's to use as leveraging from the other sources.
And that
We
has
use
been,
it for, because we don't have funding for like weed control
Yeah.
in upland areas. We have to stick to the riparian areas. You know, we can use it to apply for grants to whatever's left.
20 years ago, it may have been 5,000. So,
It was
yeah.
4, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
4,000. And we were able to get a couple more. They wanted to, there was talk of cutting us, and we were able to come to a meeting and talk to them, and they gave us 2,000 more, so that was nice. And we are working on some other things to hopefully build that, and we're building our relationship with the county right now. So Senate Bill 1010 set up the local area committees, and the local area committees are members, so there's 38 in Oregon, and each local area committee had to create an egg water quality management area plan, and that's what drives this funding. And I actually have my plan with me. It's kind of our Bible, but our local area committee members are made up of livestock, dairy, crops, timber, fisheries, environmental, and small and large farm type community types represent on that. And the North Coast area, it covers Tillamook, Clatsop, and Columbia, and West Multnomah. That's our area. And the local area committee meets every other year, reviews the plan, and sets goals to attain the rules. And the rules, the Ag Water Quality Management Area Plan rules, are enforced by Oregon Department of Agriculture. So we are the non-enforcement, ODA is the enforcement. We provide the technical assistance and advice and help, where ODA is kind of the one that makes sure you're complying with egg water quality laws.
So Misty, can I ask a question?
No, you're
I'm
right.
sorry I keep interrupting you, but that's what I do.
Where'd you get that coffee? What's in there? Man, that's great.
That's from Scorcher. I got the end of the day coffee. So when you're setting area rules, what is your provenance? What can you set rules on for? I mean, this is amazing that you've got an agency to enforce rules that you're setting. What kind of rules can you set there? What are
We set more, the agency gives us the rules that the legislature and the governor have put in place.
Okay. Big little.
We set goals how to attain the rules, which would be, vegetating your riparian areas to reduce sediment, getting into your streams, getting into waters of the state is kind of a big deal. We don't want that to happen. And so we primarily are looking at the ag focus. There's different players in this game. There's your urban area, there's your forestry people, and we are focusing on ag people. So making sure that our streams are vegetated, that there aren't huge manure piles beside them. Stuff like that. I'm going to give you some examples of projects that we've done down the road here.
Okay. If Misty hadn't been there, it would have been extremely difficult for the district to have a presence.
So this funding, so basically, I'll fast forward here. So the district funding is to carry out the plan, but it also provides for staff. We can go ahead and move to the next slide here. Okay. And this funding has a focus. And, okay, so I'll back up to the staff. So it provides staff. So what we have right now is we have 2 employees. One is funded for 25 hours a week, and one is funded for 35 hours a week. And we make magic happen all year round. Just as much magic as a lot of our neighboring districts, and actually we kind of outcompete them a little bit. But that's what we have to work with until we can leverage more funding. We have had more resources in the past, but the way things are going, there's less grant funding available. I've been doing the budget now for 18 years, and I've watched us be small and grow big, and then funding sources started to go away. So that's getting to be just a challenge of this day and time.
And federal support has gotten stretched thinner and thinner.
We actually lost our federal support. So we used to get funds from NRCS.
And you actually had a human being.
Actually had
you got 2 human beings.
Yep.
Who lived here.
Yep, they gave us funds to use our office and partner with us, and then they moved into the office and gave us funds. They said they'd give us more, but they didn't. And then they asked if they could live for free, and we let them. And then it got to be a strain, and we had to say, we need to either help pay the expenses or get your own office. Mm-hmm. So they got their own office. But in Tillamook for Clatsop, and they serve Clatsop.
Do they also serve Columbia County?
No, just Clatsop.
Okay.
Just Clatsop, not Clatsop and Tillamook?
No, just Clatsop. Apparently
Sorry,
it saved money having them stationed in Tillamook than to give us money to be in our office. And they were getting a deal. But anyways, our funding focus that we get from the state, which provides our staff, is to create awareness of water quality issues, promote land management that limits nutrients and bacteria from the state waters. That's in bold print because that is like the biggest thing that we are being charged to do.
So let me push on that one a little bit, and this is probably a trick question, but I can read that a couple ways. One is from the waters coming from the ag lands downstream. Can you promote land management that limits nutrients and bacteria from state waters coming into the ag lands?
Good point.
I'm seeing a vigorous no. Thank you.
And that's been brought up.
Yeah. I mean, that's that ag forestry thing again, and okay, there we go. Thank you.
And it's been a constant conversation of butting heads. So there is funding sources to implement this North Coast Basin Area Plan, we can do that. We can apply for more grants as we can find them available. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So our scope of work for our state grant, and it's a biennial state grant, so you apply for it every 2 years, and you know you have a job for 2 years, and then you try to do good work so that you hope you have a job for the next 2 years is how that goes. And something to know is the districts that have tax bases still can apply for this grant. So even if we had a tax base, we could still apply for this grant and focus that money on water quality. And then we can, if we had more funding, we could use that for other operations of our powers.
And may even be more competitive in the grant process if you say we have staff that can actually get this done.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's another challenge with the limited amount of funding.
Yeah.
Funding is retaining the staff that can really do the technical writing and can connect to the local area. That's always a challenge. So our state grant funding has a scope of work that is, and this is, so it kind of narrows our district powers in 568, 550 down to this. So the key is really a permanent tax rate, which would unlock all those powers that are listed in statute. We can develop materials and conduct outreach events for landowners and operators relating to the Ag Water Quality Management Area Plan. We can provide technical assistance to landowners with a strong tie to water quality. We can participate in the biannual review of the plan, collaborate with our Ag Water Quality partners, attend the related trainings. Go ahead and go to the next slide. There's this really fun one that we can do, except of our scope of work, except we cannot dedicate more than 5% of our budget towards general water quality issues, non-riparian weeds, pollinators, upland habitat, and upland species. And that's like $2,900 a year is what we get to do that. So that's some of the fun stuff that we can't quite dig in.
So part of your original sort of powers that you set out, there's a whole slide on surveys, investigations, research. I'm not reading any of that necessarily in the scope of work here.
Not in the fund.
So does that mean that you're essentially not able to, at this time, do things like water quality research and
Not pay for it. I mean, unless our directors want to independently do it themselves,
right?
Staff can't spend any time doing it.
Fiscally.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's been part of the mechanism that you have lived with for all of your life there.
Yes.
That if you were funded, you could turn into a problem.
I want to know who your mental health provider is.
Yeah. So I get lots of phone calls, and I don't like saying, well, if I had funds, I could do that. I have to figure out a better way to say, I'm noting your concern, and I'm hoping that we can address that. And then also, we're expected, we have to track and report on our activities. And 25%, this is a new thing now, they keep narrowing us down. When we first got the money, we could pay for like half of our office expenses and our insurance, and now we have to pay for all our own stuff. But now 25% of the funding is required to be spent outreaching and implementing the Ag Water Quality Management Area Plan in a focus area. So we started in the Lewis and Clark area. And if you lived in the Lewis and Clark area, you probably got our newsletter because we had funding to outreach to that area. And devoted funding there to workshops and trying to get in touch with landowners. And we did get a couple projects going. Now we currently have moved to the Bear Creek, Big Creek area. And we're still implementing, we have to come up with assessments and do different things with Oregon Department of Agriculture before they cut the reins and let us go. But that's the next area we've moved to for our focus area. So and that's about $14,580 a year. They expect us to really hit that area hard. We do assessments, streamside vegetation assessments. We try to gauge how many landowners we have with livestock, do mailings, hope to have some meetings with landowners, workshops in that area. And so go ahead and go to the next page. So some of our partners in the game, you'll probably recognize names. These are our core conservation partners. NRCS, watershed councils in our area, the Land Trust, CREST, and OSU Extension.
Woohoo!
Yay! And NRCS is our federal counterpart. They have the ability to put federal funds on the ground to address natural resource concerns with an emphasis on farming, and they also do have a forestry program. They were the ones that put Plimpton Creek back into its pre-07 state and helped that area. Lately, they've been focusing on high tunnels to extend the growing period for landowners, and also drip water irrigation.
Who's the local NRCS person?
Thomas Gherkins from Tillamook Soil and Water.
Oh.
Or in Tillamook County. So we can go ahead and go to the next one.
So when he comes up from there, does he spend much of his time traveling?
Yes. Yeah. So he tries to line everything up and make it a good trip, and then he ends up going back and forth. But Thomas is new to this area, and he loves our area, and it doesn't bother him.
So he'll be involved in the Bear Creek, Big Creek focus.
He will, and he's developing a focus area in the same area, which includes Brownsville, that he's been trying to connect with landowners out there. So grant sources, these are some of the grant sources that we have used to implement projects. And, it says private. We did one time receive, it was like $45,000 from Georgia Pacific to do weed control in the county. That was really cool.
Maybe we could get dispensaries to contribute to the weed board.
There you go. So yeah, we're always up for you have
Creative.
something you want us to implement, and it's within our legislative power. We will take money to do that and give you reports on what we're doing, which is what we did for them. Go ahead and go to the next slide. These are some of our grant projects that we implement to address the keeping pollution out of streams. So I'm going to show you some examples of those. Thank you. So here's an example of a heavy use area we implemented with an OF small grant, and this is for a horse owner. So basically, in order to implement these grants, we have to have a resource concern. So this is not preventative. This is we have a problem to correct. That's how the funding works in this state. So you got to have horses, and you got to have mud, and you have to have a stream for with fish in it.
And manure.
Yes, and then we can get grant
Usually if you have
funds to help
horses,
you.
you get
But
that.
if you buy a piece of property and you want to get horses and you don't want mud and you don't want to pollute the stream, we can't really help you until you create a resource concern. So that's kind of the...
But these are good models for someone who wants to be proactive.
Yes, yes. So these people actually tried to be responsible. They did not want to get into trouble with ODA. They came to us, and then we had to break the news that we can't get grant funding unless we can show that there's a horse on the property and there's these things. So this is a heavy use area, and let's see. And these are kind of my passion. So this is another heavy use area that we implemented with a small grant for a different horse owner. When I first started studying heavy use areas, I got really excited because I grew up in Brownsmead, and I thought these would be great for where you're feeding the round bales to the beef outside in the winter. But I haven't been able to get any beef guys to bite on them yet. And it's probably good because this particular horse owner has had, in fact, this is the third one we've implemented. There's another one before this that had problems. that much gravel, but the moles have been digging up the hoof grid that is underneath this that helps the drainage. And so she's paying a lot of money to maintain this, to keep the moles out. And so there has been kind of a trial and error and learning curve in implementing these. If the landowner, chooses to maybe cut costs on following the specs, sometimes problems happen too. So it's a learning curve, but the ones that we have implemented, people come to us all the time and say, that is just so beautiful, we want one of those. Go ahead and go to the next one. This is the same heavy used area, just a different view of this.
So Misty, can you describe what actual work or funding is, what are we
How much
funding
we
here?
spend? Okay, so
And-
with this small grant, we can get now up to 15,000. Back then it was only 10, and 10% of that grant goes to us for administrating. That's another way to help us be able to do other things and pay for our office. So they basically have 90% of 10,000, and landowner has to provide 25% match. Some of that match can be our time helping them on the project, or their time implementing the project.
Okay.
They hire the contractors, they put the stuff on the ground, we reimburse them. They do get a thing on there for the taxes, a 1099-G for grant funds. And it's up to their accountant to decide if it's...
So in this project, something like the fencing and the gravel and the underlayerment is what is getting paid for by the grant?
So excavation, leveling the site out.
So that was like
clearing-
a slope site that things drain downhill, and the idea is to level it and have an official drain, okay?
And
good.
there's permits
It's not real
involved.
sophisticated, is it? It's a pretty simple approach, generally.
It is. Depending on how much you're going to remove, there's an ag exemption permit you have to get, the landowner gets. It used to be $34, I think it went up to $75. They get that, and there's excavation to level the site. They put in the hoof grid, they bring in sand, put in the hoof grid, and then there's different gravel they put in, build the fence, and it's pretty much, yeah, it can be a slam dunk, but...
Is there a drain, or is it just sort of dispersed drainage through the gravels?
This landowner put in a drain around it. It depends. We try to get some NRCS specs, and NRCS has the advantage of an engineer for different areas to make sure what will work and recommends to the landowner, and hopefully they will follow those recommendations. They have to meet the grant specs too. And we are required to come back and do a monitoring report to make sure that it's still there and being used the way that the grant thought it was being used. So that's something that goes into that.
A lot of documentation per dollar spent.
Yes,
Oh,
it
yes.
is.
Reporting is become my cup of tea. Okay, I'm trying to find where I'm at here. Okay.
Steam bank.
So go ahead and go to the next one, stream bank stabilization. This is a recent stream bank stabilization project. Kind of hard to see these pictures, but this was a landowner who, during a high tide event, heavy slow melt, and heavy rain event, you probably remember that happened during our 170 days of rain that we had, lost 2 sections of stream bank. And one section in particular was, if it was allowed to keep going, it was going to take out his only access to his farm. And eventually, the 110-year-old farmhouse that sits there. So this landowner, he raises crops and poultry that's served at our local restaurants from Astoria to Seaside. So we helped him out and did a stream bank stabilization.
Is this like Guess Your Farmer?
What?
Is this Guess Your Farmer? I know who it is.
Well, I'm trying not to, I didn't get permission.
No, I understand, and I won't say anything, but okay.
Good. We can talk later. But yeah,
Recognize the dog.
and so this is just looking from one end up the log, and then the next picture is looking down the log towards the stream. It's not real pretty, but it was an NRCS spec design that we were able to implement with local contractors. This landowner wanted to get it done before the next winter, so the event was in February, and I think it was 2017, and then we got the project done August of 2017. So we did all the permitting, the core, all the design, and nailed it. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This is kind of looking at the log. This is a riprap placed, and then the log, it's anchored rebar. And then he planted on his own willows and did a complete planting along that bank where this is the farm he took over that was probably historically logged along. He's trying to put it back. Go ahead and go to the next one. This is a riparian example of a riparian exclusion fencing and planting. This was in 2017 also. It's kind of difficult to see, but on the far side is the old existing fence and the Lewis and Clark River. And then the planting that was put in place, and then there's a new fence on the far side of the picture, and then you kind of notice the barn as a reference point for the next photo. Then this is in 2019, so this is the area becoming vegetated, not having livestock on it, and being allowed to filter any nutrients that may be getting into that river. The next slide is just an example of the same site of the erosion that was occurring there in 2017. And note the barn, and then go ahead into the next. And then this isn't a really good picture because I couldn't really get out on the stream bank. Vegetation was quite thick, which I guess is a good sign, but that's kind of the same site. Just hoping that will stabilize. Go ahead and go to the
And
next.
has that bank smoothened out, or is it still its size, still pretty good?
Still pretty steep.
Still pretty steep, but better.
Yeah, and we actually lost part of our plantings. We had a 50% survival rate. Most of them were spruce. We only lost 11 spruce, so there's still 159 out there. And then this is just showing a same site but a different section of the project. This is a swale here that we planted. This is 2017, and then again, and some backwater comes in there, again in 2019, what it looks like now. So hopefully those plantings will continue. You can only really see the little spruces sticking up. There's actually western red cedar, twinberry, big leaf maple, salmonberry, nine bark, and willow also in that area. The landowner's only complaint was that if we would have planted them farther apart, he could have mowed around them and they help them shoot up. But so, anyways, that was the only thing. But I think it's doing good. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is my personal favorite. This is a riparian planting and a stream bank stabilization project that was done 20 years ago by the Clatsop Soil and Water District via Fishermen in the Woods program. So I don't know if you guys can see it. I can see it, but there's obviously a human made. You can see the trees there along the river are.
Those are 20-year-old Sitka spruce that now shade the river to reduce the
temperature for salmon and keep the stream bank stable to reduce sediment for the fish. And then the next picture is also the same site, just a different view along that farm. And then the next photo is a manure storage building. These are hot item. We build a lot of these. And this one is for a horse stable. Go ahead and go to the next one. This is another view of that. Pretty popular. We do these with the OEB small grants. Go ahead to the next one. This is for a sheep farm, and he actually has a gutter encatchment that is provides a watering source for. It's not set up in this picture because this is obviously in the summer spring area, but in the wintertime he's able to put a container out there to water a sheep to get them off an off-stream watering source.
So previously, just being open was an option, or What problem? How was this addressing the problem?
Open
Manure.
pile.
Yeah, open manure pile.
Uncovered.
So it's covered now. The no runoff is
Yeah.
leaching into the groundwaters and stream. Basically, that's the resource concern we're addressing. Okay, going to the next. So we have an annual part of our outreach. We have an annual native plant sale every spring, and we do workshops. We're hoping to have a pollinator workshop this spring too, and a native plant workshop. You can find us at the fair booth and the spring garden seminar, and we also sponsor a youth animal feeding operation award, which is for a youth that's responsibly taking care of their manure responsibly in their feeding operations. And we just started, we sponsored a tax sale, which we found was a good tool to round up landowners that are hard to reach and outreach to them. That worked out pretty good. We did it last year, and ODA was pleased with the results, and they are looking forward to us doing it again. I put website on here because it should be a great outreach communication tool, but ours is out of date. And largely because we are only allowed with our funding to post water quality information to the site. So maintaining the site, updating it, updating our 2010 software isn't included in our funding. So we're kind of just, if you go to our website afterwards tonight and you're thinking, what is going on? It's just under construction, and we're kind of at a dead stop right now. We're just stuck at the moment. We also have an annual meeting in November. We're required to have these meetings once a year. It's meant to be a gathering of landowners. Ours is November 14th, and it will be at 1195 Irving at 6 p.m. And we hope to see you all there.
In Astoria?
In Astoria, yes.
Gail, do you mind notifying your group about that?
I can do that. You said 1195?
1195 Irving,
Grace Community Baptist Church.
Oh, okay.
in their
Community room.
downstairs
What,
there.
the date again?
It's November 14th.
Okay.
I think it's Thursday. Thursday?
You have no direct football conflict this year.
Right. That's what we're going for. Between 6 to 8 p.m., we usually have a potluck gathering at 6 and a meeting at 7, and discuss the accomplishments of last year and programs that we have available for next year. You can go to the next slide. So obviously you can see here that relationships are pretty important to what Clatsop SWCD does. We live in a really unique scenic place with unique seasons, and we want to conserve those natural resources of our area. But to do that, we have to build trust and relationships with all types of landowners and land occupiers. We hope to inspire and educate and assist with voluntary conservation on farms and other properties. And to work together for farms, fish, and forestry, and the natural resources they rely on to sustain themselves. And I considered it an honor to work in my backyard. Go ahead and go to the next one. These are kind of some examples of what we have in our area. This is just what I see on a typical over time. And there's 3 slides. It's in your PowerPoint that kind of just go over the different scales of projects that I see.
Is brush and pet one thing, like or is a brush goat a thing I don't know about?
Some people have brush goats to maintain the brush.
Oh, I see. Yes, thank you.
And also, like horse owners will have brush goats.
Got it.
The goats will eat what the horses want. They work together.
Thank you.
And then there's, the pet section where, there's a lot of cute little goats out there, let's just say. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. We do have some small-scale rabbit raisers for pedigree purposes and meat. There is some fur in that, but not much in our area. We have specialty crops of all sorts. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And we also have a few CSAs, which is really cool. A large
amount of 4-H producers.
So I should know this, but is this a significant contribution to the local livestock production, the number of livestock that 4-H individuals produce? Or do the larger producers far out, I would imagine?
Oh, the larger producers outnumber the 4-H.
Okay.
But I thought this was the largest we've had because I've grown with 4-H, you know. But I was told at the office today that they've had larger years. So
There's about 450 youth and 150 adults. Is that around the number?
that's around. I think we were pushing 600, but 450 with livestock projects. I'm thinking is probably where I think the 6 I got was the amount of youth we have. But that's why we used to be able to outreach to our youth producers, and that's why we started sponsoring that award as part of that outreach. Now the legislature will not let us educate children anymore because there's new liability insurance involved with that. So we can only outreach adults right now. So that's something that just happened 2 years ago, which was kind of a bummer because that was a big number of our stuff. Growing FFA in our area, and you know, what we commonly hear at the office, we get a phone call from someone, love that they call us. I just moved here, I have 2 acres, you know, I want to get, you know, a couple horses and a cow and a goat, you know, all these things on their 2 acres. So we have emerging, I do not like to call them hobby farms, but that I don't know how to describe them. One time I found a better word for it, and I can't remember what it was at the moment today. So, but we have a growing number of that, and being able to keep communications with them is important. And Mike is, so I'm joined here with my chair, Mike, and Chris Farrar. Believe it or not, Robert Strickland is Associate Director of the board.
Believe it or not.
I'm some kind of a weed person.
Yeah, I think he's on the weed committee, yeah.
Can I ask you a question about weed? Because I really always wondered, there's not a lot of agricultural production in Clatsop County, but there are a whole lot of weeds. If you're a weed board, if you got more money from the county during the budget process, if
Are you looking at me?
I'm looking at you. Well, because I tried a few years, and the arts funding quadrupled, but the soil and water conservation district funding remained static. But it just seemed to me that there are a whole lot of weeds, particularly in residential and developing areas. And wouldn't it be lovely if they're, you know, like you got goats who come in and whatever, you could be our weed board if you got more money from the county with that work.
Yes.
Great. You know, when we get the grant funding, where, like, you drive through town, you see a lot of Japanese knotweed. We all know what that can do. It leads to erosion. But the weed board, you know, they want us to be working in watersheds and not within city limits and places.
But I'm talking in rural. I mean, there's a big growth in rural residential in the, you know, the part where I live down south of Kent Beach and Orange Key, out in the country. What I see in the wetlands there is a huge increase in the last 20 years in the weeds, and so they're getting ahead of us. So if I would like to consider the possibility of more active weed control in rural Clatsop County.
So there is a new pot of funding that I'm hoping to put together. It's county weed funding from the state through the same weed program that we applied for. It's just a new funding. And if you have the official designation from the county as the official weed designated agency, then you can apply for this funding. And we have an actual unofficial designation. It was when Dave was here, he was able to attain that. The county commissioners at that time didn't want to give us an official designation, but they said, we're not going to do anything about weeds, but we'll direct everything to you. We'll give you an unofficial, you're the weed main contact for the county. So
maybe there's room for improvement. Or for scope and legal basis and funding and all of that just to get a handle on some of these invasive weeds.
Yeah, I'm trying to gauge the responsibilities of being a weed control entity and making sure that, you know, the funding is taking on that responsibility.
Misty, I appreciate your presentation, and it looks like you all do great, thankless work for too little money.
But we can at least clap.
So thank you. I have a new thing to add to my gratitude list, which is
Yes.
the work you all do.
Gosh.
Any questions from the public or the board about the presentation, or of the other members of the district?
I think she was extremely diplomatic because it has been pure hell for decades of making sure they don't have any funding. Warrenton not wanting anyone encroaching on their God-given right to take down markers for the no-build zone, and that would just happen to be where powers that be were developing. And it's so she's that group. If people could see how things were of the blowing dunes, it's just hard to imagine Classic Plains looking like a dust bowl. That there was an area called Devil's Bowl. That would just so sorely, and that's why there is such an effort, even just to, when you clear land, yes, you need to do some kind of temporary weed. Just spread a bale of hay or something, just so it doesn't expand as a blowing dune. It just are burning down. There is no soil out there. Yep. So all it takes is this duff out there to burn up, and then you again have a blowing dune. Those pine trees that were planted to stabilize also burn up easily. Their Classic Plains could look like hell extremely easily were it not for the forgotten work that the Warrenton Dunes Conservation District, subsequently the Classic Soil Water Conservation District, did to try and protect it.
So it originated from the dunes back in the day. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, like at McMiniman's, to look on the wall to see what the golf course looked like in the 20s. It was it was drifting sand dunes all over the place.
We have pictures in our office that show the restoration.
It's amazing.
Covering up beach houses.
People don't even know.
Right.
Yes, sir.
In our discussion, the round bales were brought up. I know that's kind of a new way of doing things, save on the labor. What is done with the plastic material that those bales are wrapped in? Is there any regulation regarding disposal of those?
Mike, you're having a
No, I
reaction.
don't think so. It's just a matter of how you handle any kind of packing material or binders or that sort of thing.
Well, the reason I ask is that the breaking down of that plastic material does the same thing in the soil that the large amounts of plastic do in the ocean. They plug the gut of the small microbes that produce
Basically,
food.
though, I think the producers are disposing of it. They're not letting it be on their land. You don't want it mixed up with your mower or your cows eating it or the sheep or whoever you're feeding.
Okay, so it's being removed
Right.
and disposed of in a... Okay.
Sure.
It's also a concern in my community. It's a big concern, and some farmers are responsible and do dispose of it. I don't know where, because I don't think it's recyclable. But there are places that do not dispose of it. It is lying on
I've
land,
seen
and
piles of it.
there are places where it is being burned, and which we have reported to the county. And you do the best you can. This is a major issue, and if I were queen for a day, somebody would invent something that you would be able to recycle that, because there is huge amounts of it year after year after year, and something positive would happen out of that. It's not now.
So burning plastic should also always be reported to DEQ.
Yeah.
Always.
Even though they have no money to enforce the damn thing.
They do actually. I don't know how much money they have, but we had a complaint on Scandinavian Road, and DEQ addressed it right away.
I will say it is an option, because again, I put up many square bales and did a few round bales too, to do twine round bales, and it would be biodegradable anyway, because you can use regular twine.
Well, the plastic materials that are used, if they say they're biodegradable, that just means that they turn into small enough pieces that
Oh, I
animals.
have no illusions about the ones that look like plastic wrap. I don't think those are biodegradable. But there are biodegradable options if the farmer would choose to do them.
Is the plastic useful for the rain, keeping things dry, or is that not really? No, it's not so.
It's silage, isn't it? I think it's
Well,
all silage.
it depends on whether you're talking about the wrap around bales.
Looks like that, marshmallows.
Or big square bales, or if you're talking about egg bag type plastic, or a plastic sack around the round bale itself, or saran wrap, but it's colored, it's not clear. That's the plastic.
But it's also silage. It's
Yeah,
a fermented hay.
Fermentation and fermented hay, higher moisture hay.
So you can cut it in this climate, and it's a high nutritious thing. I fantasize about some of those white plastics from my manure pile. So it would be nice to somehow,
So they're not without function.
what?
They're not without function. They have some use, and so, but
Oh, yeah.
the issue is the burning and what to do with them.
Can you still buy sisal baling twine, or is it non-existent?
Yes, you can, oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Plastic's more popular though.
Certainly.
And the kind that you grew up with, it isn't going to last for a couple of 3 years, and some of those bales sit there
Yeah.
more years.
Yeah.
But even the cornstarch-based plastics, they turn into the same destructive material. There's nothing wondrous about it.
Solution. I don't know how prior to 2004 it was, but there is a device the guy come out with in Japan where you convert plastic to heat oil. But you could have them bring their plastic in and their milk bottles and their whatever, and fuel all the lawnmowers at the high school or whatever you can choose with that. You can get a big unit, a small unit.
Very clever.
They're cool.
So our next agenda item, if we've got no more comments on the Soil and Water Conservation District, our next agenda item is discussing Goal 3. We are significantly over time at this point, but I want to volunteer. Does anyone need a 2 or 3 minute break for restrooms, just to stretch your legs, things like that? Okay. Let's take a 3 minute break just to get up and
So
get
there's
moving.
Get circulation.
restroom here, and there's one just down the hall on the
that
left
feels
side.
good. I was going to get up and stand up anyway.
Gail, here was a message I didn't give to you.
A rebel on my hands.
2 copies
All right, thank you.
from Tom Horning.
And Andy, we don't. You can rearrange the schedule however you want.
I'm sure reclaim time on the
continue.
Goal 1 and 2 discussions that have a pretty big chunk of time here, but
Yeah, it seems like when we've got some actual farmers here,
Yeah.
we ought to get
Yeah.
them to expand
Yeah,
on.
Yeah.
It's a busy time for them.
I can move all this to another agenda.
okay. Thanks, Gail.
Oh yes.
Oh, we were there.
Gail, I didn't keep up with myself on that little 2-page thing I gave you, with the picture. I had Googled, something about Oregon state law regarding when architects are required, assignment, and it popped up and sent me right to that. Whatever it's called, they're at the bottom. They're at the bottom. The reference manual for building official. Unfortunately, I jumped down to there, and this doesn't make it clear, but it's not the case. But it was part of this was from someone who knew that it appears to me that an architect is required except on single-family homes, on projects that are whatever thousands of square feet. And the issue was kind of, that in the county, there's a tendency to use architects. And only I didn't copy something that made it. I copied the wrong piece. But I thought it was the very same document that was saying, it wasn't saying either one, architect and architect either one.
But
and
I'm wondering
this
how
doesn't
this
say
is
that.
all going to come
So
together.
there's a disconnect here. From
From
what I've heard,
everybody
by Google,
separate ideas.
is what sent me to there. But I looked at the wrong, there were like 145 cases in here where the word architect was used, and I just looked at the wrong place, and grabbed it, brought it. But that's why that is listed. But it doesn't match. It is. You can get a stamp from an engineer just as good as an architect. But that was state law. It was kind of under your purview. So you're confident that I could understand how and the architect was ever but the explanation was, well, it's because that's what was made.
It's an engineer.
And he's the only guy. Probably that's all what's available. That's why that was there. There was no mistake in it. It was bad scores. Some people said, oh yes, state law says you need an architect. Not single family homes that aren't for big projects.
Yeah, I think it's over 4,000 square feet.
Yeah, right, whatever it is. But I copied the wrong information. That's the kind of long run So are you going for? And I agree with you. I don't know. But it was interesting. It was kind of this. Here's why.
So we have had a little bit of discussion about that, and I'll just say for disclosure, funding for that.
I'm going to say
I was staring at me.
but I don't know how the truth is.
We have already talked about
But that's why you have it.
All right, thank you for the clarification, because I was wondering.
Yeah, no, that's all now to do with, you're supposed to have a stamp on projects of a certain size. Because you have an engineer stamp.
the body was interested in doing something like that.
True or not?
I didn't know the quantity. Well, I would like to use it. I could do
That's something that is really nice in today's
It is. I mean, the technology products, that's something that I in Africa,
Having been that's why everybody got a lot of contract with I should have cut off figures for that. I'm going.
I go to starting farms. So I'm going to do is go say, go back.
Yeah, I love time. But give me some time.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah, they were half fulls, and then they had the dates and whatnot on the other side.
I have still
They were very good. The guy, Bill,
I have one next door.
So your father, what was it? No, yes, no, would have been a day early when you go. So there.
Everybody, can we start to reconvene?
So Ron, did you say you're from Colorado? Denver Front Range? Yep, that's why you like the green.
I was going to throw that in there.
That's good.
We had a lot of properties, but they're all xeriscape and dripped in. And I was like, I go to Cascadia Nursery over here, and I walked in there and I had tears in my eyes. I was like,
Just the moisture.
Just plant stuff out here.
Yeah. Grows right up.
Yep. It was. Well, we got our house over there by Jewel 13 years ago. And we finally, I took a promotion. Just moved out there. So,
Got it. I love it up there. Right up there.
previous prison life. I was a locomotive. Locomotive shop.
Oh, really?
Don't tell him.
That's a secret.
I didn't like the old guys.
Gail, are you ready?
Yeah.
And do we don't have slides for this section?
No, you still might share.
Okay, let's get started with Goal 3 discussion. I do want to say, so those of you who are in the public, and if you've been here before, you may be familiar with this, but we separate out public comment and input on the agenda. But in this section, especially in this section, I invite and welcome public comment as we're discussing the goals. So especially those of you who are here from the farming community who have input for us, what I'd like to do is integrate as much as possible as we go through some of these suggested questions and then just commentary from this group about the reading material we've had for this month's meeting. If you have input, if you have questions, please raise your hand or shout out. I'll try to recognize you as best I can, but we really value the fact that you're here and we want to hear from you. So please be welcome. So for Goal 3 discussion, Gail, I like to ask the staff to just lay out what Goal 3 is, what we're talking about today, and how it might impact life in the county.
So Goal
In 2
3,
minutes.
and believe me, I will be quick because I didn't prepare a presentation. That's why I have guest speakers. But Goal 3 deals with agricultural lands, and basically in Clatsop County, agricultural lands are not our big land use. It's when we get to Goal 4, which is the forest lands, that's probably about 85% of the county lands. So really what we're talking about is protecting farmland, and then that would tie back into eventually your zoning. A lot of the regulations that regulate exclusive farm use zones are set by state statute, so we're very, very limited in what we can change. The state is very protective, and rightfully so, of its farm and forest lands, and so it's very difficult if you want to try and change them and convert them to a housing type of use or a commercial use or an industrial use. There are certain processes that you'd have to go through to take a goal exception in order to convert those lands, and basically what you're going to have to prove to the state is that there is no other way that you can put housing anywhere else in the county without converting farmland or forest land. So it's very difficult, but that's really Goal 3, and I think that was less than 2 minutes.
Well done. Gail, do you happen to have this material from the packet in a form that you can project?
Yes, I think I do.
Just
So
because
if you-
I wanted to ask some questions about the
All right.
data presented there.
Feel free to carry on your discussion while I do this.
So there are some suggested questions on the agenda. I'm going to just start going through them. If we end up diverting from the questions, that's great. We'll just follow the discussion where it goes. We do have in total 45 minutes left by
Yes.
the agenda. We'll try to move through this as quickly as we can. However, we want to be aware also that we've got a very long process here. You know, this is like a 3-year process. If we don't get to questions today, we will be able to come back to them. So don't feel like you need to rush. We'll take the time that we need. Okay, so how does zoning affect farming in Clatsop County? I think this is an area where I'd like to hear actually from the public. How have you interacted with zoning previously in the county?
You know, this goes back to Misty. The soil maps have nothing to do largely with zoning. You know, and yet, you know, so like some of the best soils and climates for agriculture are in Cannon Beach. You know, it just you know, when you look at this, but they used to have sheets they'd give away, and I know it's digitized, but Clatsop County has really benefited from. If someone comes in and wants to know where is the best place for me to go farm, you can learn from those sheets that she used to have, and they still do. It's a marvelous resource. And those aren't zoning maps.
Right.
You know, but if someone really wants to have a productive farm, it's a place to start, not the zoning maps.
Okay. Suzanne, you had.
Okay. So, I think I believe that I know that he does 3-acre farming, but I think in general it's not done much. And I think having RA5 to me is an odd way to deal with farming. If we're going to have, like, I'm talking about my experience in the Hill and River Valley, which in the day when it was highly populated under all the logging, and there were logging camps all over the place, they were clustered. And we have a few population clusters, evergreen acres, and anyway, and I think having a more dealing with sewage and water and clustering to me makes more sense, and having more land protection for agricultural type lands. But in reality, we mostly have, what is the maximum size for farm again?
Minimum size is 80. There isn't a maximum size.
So you have RA5 and EFU 80. Or Ag 80.
Right. So minimum in a residential agriculture zone is 2 acres.
Right, but not Jewel. It's pretty much
all 80.
RA5 or 80. But if it's RA5 and you need a income, and then you're in the dance, and I know all the time I'm told the assessor's office is totally separate from zoning, but there's a dance when you are a homeowner. Would you not say also perhaps that if you are going to farm, because this, and I always do the mantra that most of the land in Clatsop County is forestry, that don't pay taxes in the county coffers. So it makes a lot of demand on the rest of us to put out money, including if you have agricultural land that's fallow and not making money, it's not okay from the assessor's point of view. And I think there's a disconnect there that's an important thing to figure out, because we're I think, at cross purposes. But I would like to see, because the Nehalem River has Nehalem loam. I don't know how all of it is. It's a beautiful, I have extremely deep loamy soil one of the little things that I can just say now on the housing is we also talked at the meeting about, design review, because we had a lot of old original houses, 2 or 3 bedroom, one, small, not McMansions, and more housing like that, which would be low rent, which is what we need, right, Ron, out in the valley. Because the McMansion people aren't going to work in the restaurants, and some of the other local stuff will be people working.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pat?
Something that occurred to me as far as how does land use planning affect farming. The bias towards preserving maximum amount of land in large blocks, and we talked earlier about how Napa and other kind of places, there's a lot of small block farms, and clearly, it's biased towards Willamette Valley being, ag land, and I don't know if that's a problem here or if it's something we can address to not inhibit small farmers in the context of policies that were written for larger ones. I don't have any specifics there, but like a lot of things here on the coast were different than the valley, that was the impetus for a lot of the legislation about especially ag land use planning. And so to the extent that we're unique and we can adapt it to help our local farmers, that's obviously something I think we'd like to do.
Could you say that one other way so I know what the hell you're saying?
Yes. The Oregon Land Use Plan in general advocates for to preserve maximum amount in large blocks.
And you want to be sure to preserve those 2.5 acre little bits of a small farm.
10 acres.
I think my focus would be on a functioning farm unit, irregardless of the geographic size of the landscape that it was on. That might be.
Yeah.
Well,
Correct.
there's some strong considerations to look at what kind of quality land you have. If it'll grow kiwis, you can make 20 times return on an acre. If you can, it depends on the land you're going to grow. Can you grow grapes? Well, in certain places, but the environment is changing now, and we're seeing some of the vineyards move towards the coast even a little more. I'm not sure what we have here, if that's even conducive to that.
Broccoli.
So if you look at, if we can't grow kiwi and we can grow marijuana or whatever, I mean, you're looking at land, but you're looking at a lot of expense with the electricity and the rest of the utilities that's going to take. It's what are you going to be able to do with that land and have the quality here? We don't have sheep with great wool because of the water. At least I'm familiar with Willamette Valley pretty well. Because that sheared sheep goes to felting that's in roofing. It doesn't go to shearling jackets. So you've got to look at the land with reference to the product that you're going to do. And having read these rules over, they really kind of hamstring you when you would try and apply them here.
But isn't it the way it works is someone who has a piece of property already or who wants to purchase one is purchasing an existing thing? It's like the farms aren't based on the soil maps. The farms are based on the transaction of the farm sales in the course of time.
And I agree with you. I think there's another thing that it's so a little elusive, but in the time period when this was written to now, the ways of farming, it seems, have really changed. The kind of farming that Larry is doing for local restaurants or the CSAs are doing, or that kind of thing, use different methodologies. They do intensive agriculture. It's not California agribusiness or even Willamette Valley large farms. And we need to find a way to help that kind of thing succeed. And I think it was Larry who told me that they used to grow potatoes.
That is what I made. I want Larry to come forward a little bit more for he'll tell us.
We don't know when we're going to need to supply more of our own food here.
They aren't the giant spuds, but they sure have a whole lot more flavor.
Okay. Anyway.
I was at the LCDC meeting that was last week and talked to the guy, they were giving a talk on goal 3 and 4 and of the state land use planning goals. And I asked him why it was that, that exclusive farm use only applied only correlation between what you eat and your health is becoming better understood all the time. And this is why farmers markets, local food, all these things are growing in demand. There's tremendous opportunity for anybody who is willing, to put the back-breaking work into farming that it takes to live that kind of lifestyle. The real benefit being, what the lifestyle affords you to your personal life. And, my concern is that, so I asked this guy if it would be possible to have smaller acreage, zone, exclusive farm use. And that has to happen on the county level, not the state. So the counties do have the ability to zone smaller sections of land that's not as exclusive farm use. Now, I don't understand the ups and downs of zoning laws and, how that impacts all the things that it impacts. But I do know that as someone who makes a living from farming, that that I have concerns about land around me that could be broke into 1 acre lots and housing division development put in. And we live in a fish resource area. I get lots of fish bones and skins and scraps, and I compost this stuff. Compost it on our farm, and this is what we use for nitrogen, phosphorus, and fertilizers. It's free. This stuff goes to the dump. Why would I not take advantage of that? Just a minor detail of odors that arise when you use composting fish.
Imagine.
The bears that become your neighbors.
It's a real big deal. Yeah.
It smells like money.
Manure to the farmers in Tillamook. This is the smell of money. Phosphorus fish bone meal and fish meal, when you buy it processed as fertilizer source for nitrogen and phosphorus, are very expensive.
Yep.
The processing plants are throwing all kinds of these.
About 70% of the fish is
It's waste.
waste. And, that is tremendous for your
And
growing.
we're lucky
It's
here
not
to have
compost.
it's not bioproducts anymore, it's biosource. So a lot of it is utilized there. But it's not going into fertilizer.
Cat food.
The plant is going into pet food. So the pet food market has, cornered this resource as a source of highly nutritious protein. And it's become very valuable for pet food.
But it gets down into that issue of how tolerant are people
Right. That's my concern,
of smelly fish waste.
Right. And it can be kept to a minimum depending on how you do it. But my concern would be if somebody bought the property next to me and built a house, would they be able to complain to the county and get me to stop composting fish, which is essential for me to grow when I'm growing and make it.
If you were not EFU, they could.
That's what I'm wondering.
Larry, could I ask you, so a couple things. Can I ask you to sit where, say, Chris was, so we can see you from below your forehead? I want to explore a couple of things. We do have some subject matter experts, hopefully, in the room about the challenges and opportunities for us to affect EFU zoning for smaller parcels. Can we get comment from DLCD? And
My comment's going to be, I wrote it down.
Okay.
And I'll look into it. They're obviously smaller, for example. When zoning went through, there were areas that were zoned out at the time were less than 80 acres. And so I'll
Is
I will get the bigger answer well before your next.
So at the
Is-
current time, then anything less than 80 would be grandfathered in? Is that what you're saying?
When zoning first came out, which actually is 25 years, right, for agricultural lands, but when zoning came out, there were parcels that were identified smaller than 80 acres that received on it. Now, when rules changed, and they had the 80-acre lot minimums for certain types of agriculture, in terms of dividing land or sufficiency of land, then those smaller acres, yes, I guess that's where the big grandfather. So that if someone wanted to subdivide or they had an additional layer of regulations that they had to go through in order to be able to accomplish it, because now the lots are so expansive. But I will see if in this process you have flexibility to create smaller lots. That is
No.
Yeah, non-spot zoning, but areas where there is a desire for it to be protected as EFU.
Yeah, so we definitely move away from spot zoning, whether it's residential
Yeah,
lands,
sure.
industrial
Yes.
lands, or agricultural forests. But I guess as I listen to this, one of the things that you should keep in mind is that almost every zone farming is an outright allowed activity. So
meaning that the owner can choose to
farm.
do that. Yeah.
Whether it's the 10,000 acre.
But he can't be protected for about the stinky shrimp waste.
Actually, our code, we had a complaint about a year ago from Polk Riley because their
Yes.
neighbors were putting fish heads on the property, and their property was RA5.
Okay.
And we have an exemption in our code itself, not the land code, but
Yes.
the county code, that fertilizers used for agricultural purposes are not subject to code enforcement.
Oh,
Wow.
Good.
And so we could not do anything.
Wow.
And that's for
And that's-
RA5
yeah,
or
only
what all is
RA5.
that for?
No, it's just in general. So we have
In
it's
general.
like putrescible waste or something, and noxious odors, and there are a list of exempt activities that are exempt from that requirement, and fertilizers on, actual farm use are exempt from code enforcement.
Holy moly.
So if you just want to go put fish heads in your yard and say you're farming, you've actually got to be farming, but.
I'm not.
There are practices.
Obnoxious about it, I mean, I mix it with other stuff. I had no idea that was already part of the code.
But-
So that certainly addresses my major concern.
But
I
in
think also
situations where you've got an ag project and they're taking tons and tons of shrimp shells, you leave it piled up and don't spread it appropriately. That's improper use
Right,
of
you
that
are
product.
supposed to spread it.
There
and-
are some standards that have to be met. And when the dairy land out where we are disposes of its liquefied manure, there are times that it is extremely difficult to even be out in your yard. And there are ways to manage that smell, even though it costs. Those kind of things should be done. Because when the county allows subdivision for residential properties, you shouldn't be putting those people in a position where you've got 4 or 5 houses clustered close to a dairy and you can't use your yard. There have got to be some way to stop that sort of.
But the protections are to allow you to keep your dairy.
Was
Well,
the dairy
no.
there in the first place before you moved in?
The dairy was, yes, I can say that the dairy was there. The dairy was not a 3,500 cow dairy, and they weren't dealing with 250,000 gallons of liquefied manure.
Yeah.
There were 400 dairies in Clatsop County in the early 1950s, around 1952. 400 dairies.
My wife grew up on a North
Yeah.
Dakota dairy. I grew up, my first paying job was shoveling actual bullshit. Out
Made a
of,
career out of it.
yeah. It made me very good at seeing it when I see it.
Yes.
Every one of those thousands of noble firs that I planted there on Clatsop Plains had a very smelly fish carcass dropped in the hole. I went along with a
I'm
auger
not talking
on
about
my tractor.
using the material, it's being used appropriately. But
Yep.
when the county allows subdivisions and
Yep.
those property owners are subject to a $5,000 a year tax on their property, life should be considered for those homeowners as well.
So,
Yeah, I mean, that was an issue in the Willamette Valley with the urban growth boundary. Right on the edge, they would have high-density residential development. Across the street, there was a farmer spraying herbicides and pesticides.
Actually, the farm was there, and then across the street, the high-density development came
Right,
in.
right, and that gets
Well,
changed.
I grew up between a mink farm and a dairy farm.
Ew.
And so I have.
How do you get the smell develop? Really?
I wish I didn't have a sense of
Yep.
smell, actually. But, you know, those kind of things can be dealt with to some degree. And even if they're an expense to the producer of the capital product, it should be worked with in some manner so that you don't have to deal with that.
So Jim, can I try to focus this a little bit? Gail, can I ask what's the standard right now
Yes.
for? So you're saying that there is a standard that the county has in code that is being applied for noxious fumes or whatever. What standard is it now? Is it acceptable farm use? Is it accepted practice? Is it community approval? What's the actual standard that
No
is
enforcement.
well,
applied?
I don't have the actual written text in front
Okay.
of me, so I can't
So-
quote you verbatim. But basically, you know, if you're in an actual farm use and you're using the land in agricultural use, you can have the smelly stuff on your property. But again, when we had the case with Polk Riley, so we talked to Department of Ag, and they basically said the same thing that you just said, is that you can't just pile it on your property and let it rot. You've got to spread it out and follow proper practices or best management practices. in
Like
that.
taking the sewage from Seaside and spreading it in the Lewis and Clark Valley.
Oh,
Don't know that they did that.
Yeah.
They-
Oh,
they-
yeah.
Absolutely.
So part of this though at present is county zoning, correct?
Well, the county code only
County
covers
code.
county zoning.
Okay.
Or county,
But-
unincorporated county.
So a portion of this is covered by county code, which is adoptable. One of the things for this group to discuss and think about is how do we want to measure that standard? Do we want to make this a quasi-judicial thing where we ask for a community input, or do we want to set a
Before we go all crazy on this, I would like to talk to Department of Ag, because just like Forest Practices Act, I think you're going to find that there are a lot of limitations in what you can do in trying to limit impacts from a farm use.
So
Because
that's
is-
definitely true according to DLCD. That's definitely true on EFU land, right? That if it's part of acceptable use, we're out of the ball game at that point.
If it's accepted farm practices, then
Is that also true at the state level for RA land?
I do not know the answer.
So I guess this is what my question would be for staff is, what's our flexibility between state and county code? What can we discuss or decide to recommend as far as trying to establish standards and
Also ag forestry.
and balance the needs? Yes,
Not just RA, but AF.
balance the needs of community residential members and existing agricultural practice and
Well, I'm not so much speaking for anyone in my area regarding the way conditions are, but when the county allows for subdivision and residential building, those kinds of things need to be kept in mind. You have people coming from outside the area that are city livers that want to settle down out here. At least make them aware of what they're moving themselves into.
You
So
move to the
if-
country, you smell cow
Yeah.
poo.
If it is an EFU property, or if it's timber property, if it's one of the resource zones, when it comes in and we approve a dwelling on that land, then they have to sign, they have to record a deed restriction that says, we acknowledge that we're living next to a farm or a forest, that there are impacts that we're not gonna like, but we bought this property knowing,
And that starts
I'm kind
next
of
week.
summarizing the word, but, I mean, I guess, do you have a specific example of a particular subdivision that is going through this problem?
Well, actually, what I'm looking to do is put in the plan to ask the farming community to use the best standards available. There are things that can be done to lessen the impact of CAFO manure issues. The issue with putting fish wastes on the fish leftovers, the mink industry used to use all of that locally. It doesn't happen anymore. I worked in the mink industry here for 2 years while I went to college at Clatsop. That's an industry that has all of its own problems, but there's got to be a way that people that live in the county can live comfortably with the agricultural situation. Whether, I don't know what the SEPA dairy had on it, maybe 800 cows when we moved in here in '92. I doubt that there's 3,500 on there, but I've been told that that's what it's designed to be able to handle. If a dairy that size uses materials to help break down their product before they put it on the fields, most of that can be taken care of. It costs money. It might cost $1,000 in a year to buy the additive to help break that down. But that would certainly be preferential to, it's gotten better where I live. The practices have gotten better for that large dairy. And but it's just something that the county should be dealing with in some manner.
What triggered that getting better?
We have gone and talked to the current dairy owner, and
Through their own free will.
yeah, basically, it's
Cool.
goodwill. And that really is the way to do it as far as a local group of people.
I can
Try to work it out. But when the county is talking about adding dwellings in the county, people need to be made aware
Yeah.
of
Buyer
what they're
beware.
getting themselves into.
You know, on a little bit different subject, I can give you a very good example of a way the harmony can work. I did a fisheries tour a little while ago with Cedar, and we spent some time with a crab fisherman who does 750 pots. One of his main sources for the bait in those crab pots are the mink. Are the mink. So if you look at a way of a symbiotic relationship, that's probably one of the healthiest we have here. Because what's the mink? That's going to be the fur. That's your money crop. But the animal is also getting recycled, which I think is kind of a neat thing.
And the crabs have this nice furry
Have you
coat on.
noticed? Yeah. You can adjust the brown one.
They're really nice.
Cheryl's had her hand up
In
for
that
about a half an
particular
hour.
issue,
For a few
Come on,
days.
Cheryl.
when I was
Jump
involved in
in.
it, they killed mink by putting a shot of basic a fly spray with an injection, and that killed them. Personally, I wouldn't care to eat crab that have lunched on that particular product no longer.
So guys, I'm going to suggest for this particular topic that we let staff come back and DLCD come back with some more information, and we talk about this one maybe next meeting or in a future meeting.
Over lunch or something.
Yeah. Coffee.
Sticky martini.
Cheryl, you have been exceptionally patient. Can I take your 20
Yeah, I
minutes?
was going to take us back to another topic. The big picture here is that the purpose of the land use is to protect agricultural lands. The purpose of this is not to make the quality of life nice for those in the suburbs, although I adore you. So our focus here is to protect the agricultural lands. And this concept of how do we pull little farms in and give them the same protections, I think it is worth our discussion. I think that's a good topic.
Yeah.
They have done a really nice job of setting aside those 80-acre parcels, which may or may not fit anymore, but the purpose was to not let them get chopped up and to not let them get pieced away until there isn't enough left to do farming anymore. Y'all were surprised that they used to raise potatoes here in Brownsmead. When we first moved there, which was 45 years ago, we ran around and did oral history, and there's beautiful oral history there. A lot of the Scandinavians who moved there commercially grew corn, commercially grew sugar snap peas, and a number of other things. And in those days, literally put it on the wagon and took it down to where the train was, and the train would pick it up and haul it into Portland. So there was this whole fresh farming thing happening. Not on 80 acres, but not on 5.5, but in that in between. So there is that history of
The
having.
expression Gerhardt peas was a common term for your snow peas.
Yes, yes. This concept of how to bring the little ones in, I do think that we should explore. I don't know how to get there from here. And then if you're RA5 and I don't know where you are, where you're living along Highway 30, which was agricultural and then got the exemption. So there's this whole set of exemptions. There's a set of exemptions for Napa, set of exemptions for Swenson, so they can have residential. But then you want to start pulling those back in to make them farms. So if you're next to, somebody who's, living in their duplex, then we run into this kind of a problem. And one of the beautiful things about it, as it's written, is that, they say if you live next to the agricultural, you cannot be prohibited from doing what you need to do. That's one of the beautiful ones that are put in here. And we just, as we're figuring out ways to bring the little pieces in, we need to be really careful to not let them get broken up and parceled away. Because if you had a piece of property, I'm making this up, a piece of property that was 40 acres and you wanted to divide it into 4 farms, 4 small farms, then that first generation might farm there and the second generation might not, and then it gets turned to woodlot, and then the third generation, then it's residential, and that agricultural starts to go away.
Yeah,
So- Yeah, go ahead.
I agree, Cheryl, is that I think many people here not only want to preserve the farms that currently exist, but actually would like to see increasing farms, especially the smaller farms. And I think that's really the challenge for the group is how do we do that? It might be you can farm and break a parcel up into smaller pieces, but you can't build on it. Something like that. But you can farm on it. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe there are other types of incentives that may or may not be in the purview of the comprehensive plan, but we could make note of that for the county commission to think about, to encourage that.
To try
And that farmland is decreasing. I was hoping we were going to get to do yours. Since 1978, the total overall acreage of farmland and average size of farms has declined. And this is in Clatsop County, and these are the new data. Since 78, farmland in Clatsop County decreased from 22,600 acres to 15,000 acres, a loss of 7,600 acres.
Yeah.
So the farmland is
I think,
decreasing.
actually, Gail, do you mind going to the next page? Because that was one of the reasons why I asked Gail to bring this up, because I wanted to talk just briefly with the group Plus,
Oh,
I'm a
Crazy, crazy.
plus I'm a data analyst, so I always want to look at graphs and stuff and talk about them.
Say one.
That's
But,
the big one right there.
let's go to the
That's
first.
the market.
Go to the first one. So these two graphs put together, like they tell an interesting story to me because we've only lost like 30 farms, but the number we've lost like huge farms is it appears to me is what is happening. We have maybe even gained some smaller farm operations, but the acreage drop is massive between those two graphs. And it also, just as an aside, it is important to note that last span is 15 years, while every other span is 5. So the graph is sort of it's a strange perception.
That is weird.
It's also backwards as far as normal chronology, but
Go to the next one.
yeah.
Okay, I'm not a data analyst.
I was going to say, who made these graphs?
Yeah. Anyway,
No, look at the next graph.
But this is super interesting because even though they're getting smaller, they're worth a ton more.
Worth or
They're
producing?
costing more.
Which
They're
which means
costing
nobody
more
can
to
afford to
purchase.
come back
So
in.
you can't afford.
And the next graph, about half of the population is over 55.
Oh yeah.
So
and far over.
so you've got a aging population with farms that are too expensive for new young farmers to come in on. And my big question actually for staff is what's happened to the big farms that have come out of circulation? Have they all gone over to timber? Are they residential? I don't have
How
a
much is on
necessarily
Plaza
sense.
Plains? Seems to me there was an awful lot of parcelization there.
What are the big farms?
Might have been agriculture at one point.
Robert, do you happen to know, I mean, you said there used to be how many dairies?
I
It's
I
in there.
think the
It's in
Misty
there.
corrected me. They were more like 500, but there were I knew conservatively there were at least 400 dairies in Clatsop County around 1952.
I wonder if we know what has happened to those, because that would be a little piece that
They
we
were
could
often-
maybe track, that we could
Only took a
see
few
what happened
cows to
them.
do it.
Correct.
Regulations made it harder to operate.
But I'm wondering what happened to that land. Did the land stay in agriculture?
No.
We're losing agricultural land every year. So for instance, what happened to that dairy land?
The ones that I know of that are being planned now, but are being divided smaller, but still being utilized for smaller scale agriculture,
So still in agriculture as far as you know.
but smaller scale and divided down. Or sometimes there are some that just aren't close.
You can go down Turley Road and say, "What's going on here?" Well, it's just people living there. Generally, it's it's someone just recently bought. Well, because the other person had sold, but it's not because of their having any interest in agriculture.
Yeah, when I moved there were like maybe 10 dairy farms in Brownsmead, and now there are 2 functioning dairy farms in Brownsmead.
Do they take up the same number of acreage?
I think so.
Yeah,
So
I
they
just picked up
basically
school,
just
but I
become
think so.
larger.
some
But
have
the
grown.
other little ones.
The two in Brownsmead have been able to obtain more property than they did, when there was more dairies operating. Like the farm that you were talking about, for example, they have taken a lot of new farms, but I don't know how many, 5 more farms than what Seva's had for their base.
Back when Pete Pleiter was on Clatsop Plains, you see all these subdivisions that followed that. Maybe it turned into a 20-acre slice. It turned into 2 10-acre, and purely residential. One owner lives off, somewhere up in Washington. Is not a presence there. So it's effectively dead as far as agricultural activity. And he used to be a tractor dealer in town. They just get chopped up, and you can still spot which was the old farmhouse, and you still may see a few guinea fowl in the yard or something. But it was that. This is how you make money as you get old. subdivide and sell it off. You turn it into Glenwood Village. It may be a tag farm, but
And when it goes out, it doesn't come back.
So Suzanne, I do see your hand, and I want to recognize you before we're done. But I'm conscious of the fact that we've got 10 minutes left for schedule. I know that a couple of the community groups are a meeting or so behind right now of our schedule right now.
We were so far ahead. We had no reason to have another meeting.
I appreciate your overachievement.
Nicely said.
I am inclined to want to extend the agriculture discussion to the next meeting because I think the climate change discussion and even with what you're talking about, this tension between a need for residential affordable housing and that we want to keep farmland in circulation is something that we haven't really had the time to fully flesh out. And I would like to poll the group to see if that seems acceptable, and also Gail, does that seem okay from staff perspective?
Yeah, absolutely.
As far as the group, is that acceptable to put off forestry for another month and work on agriculture for a bit longer?
Sure.
Yes.
And out of this page, I think the heart of the whole thing is this central one. How can the county balance demand between increase for affordable housing with requirements to preserve and protect agricultural resource lands?
Right.
So my request would be that we would really
Lead with
focus
that
on
one?
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then keep in line of Jim's comments about the noxious interfaces that are when you start putting cheek by jowl, because that was directly related to that urbanization of the rural area.
I think that could be dealt with just simply by
Practices.
practices, yes. In the future, come up with practices that will help those large CAFO situations dispose of their. I honestly think that small dairies like 3.5, 5 acre dairy are forced to be more efficient than a big dairy. I mean, if you can make a living on 3.5 acres, you're busting your butt to do that. But you're using all of that.
Well, that's why you're seeing, these small dairies making cheese and stuff. So instead of selling their products raw, they're doing value-added stuff. And these are ways that, it increases the ability of a small farm to be able to sustain themselves because they're becoming more diverse in the things that they do. And the public is becoming more and more interested in these types of operations as a food source. And I think we will continue to see that grow because people are becoming much more aware of the importance of good food for good health.
Thank you. I do want to make sure, Susanna, you've had your hand up for a bit too.
Well, I feel better that you're going to discuss more, but then I have a request from Gail, is to really, to me, cluster development where the area that is not developed for the housing, that to really lay it out if you could, and then how do you protect that land, and if it's not for residential anymore, because you have your housing site next to another house, how can you then protect it from farmland? And for me, it should also be able to go fallow, so that when you have somebody who's got whatever and it's not being farmed, it still stays farmland in some way or another. Because right now it's really geared for productivity, a tax base, all that other stuff. And I totally agree, more of, but also what is acceptable farming practices, because a big, huge industrial pig farm or chicken farm is to me not copacetic in Clackamas County, yet we have no constraints, but if we do, what you're talking about. And also measurements, there are measurements on the sulfurs and things that come out from concentrated manures. And I think you're talking about in the manure for the dairies, the digesters that digest it before they spread, yeah. So I think there's definitely stuff in place, and let me say quickly, Jewel Wildlife Meadows was mint, and then out Jewel either cows or hay of what's gone where the farm was.
I think that points out some good things about the mint. I mean, we used to have synthetic, well, now we have synthetic mint. But I can remember driving and you'd see mint farms before, and then you'd see the places where they put in 50-gallon barrels. And that was a pretty productive item. And when you're talking about dairy, and you're talking about a small 3.5, 5 acre place, you know, we think of dairy, we've been talking mentally maybe cattle. But if you're going to look at a business plan, you're going to probably do goats, you're going to do a boutique cheese, you're going to do something like that and appeal to a higher level of people who want that kind of a product, and you're going to create a niche market. So I'm thinking you're going to have less problems with goats than you are with cattle. They'll fit into another business plan that's a little more quantifiable. Sorry, but it's a possibility. I think we'll find more things coming down the pike that, as we creatively develop other ways, that maybe will lead to some of this harmony if our focus stays with keeping some of the big land and yet developing housing where the people can have access to the facilities, restaurants, grocery stores, that
Bus.
sort of thing.
So I want to hit a couple points before we start to wrap up here. Gail, we've got a packet for next time. Is there anything we need to be particularly aware of
No.
for this packet?
Hang on to that packet. It's for goal 4. So
Okay. And we will also get a mailing for Goal 4 with summary and new agenda.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody look out for that. If we know people in the community that would be interested in this continuing agriculture discussion, or certainly any of you, we would love to have you back next time to continue this.
So, speaking of next time, we need
Yep.
to discuss this.
Okay.
So we, as you pointed out, we're ahead of all the other planning areas. So we had been looking at scheduling a workshop on October 17th. Yeah, October, for the Forest Practices Act. Would everybody still be okay? And then we would pick up this discussion in November. Okay. The other question I had is, when the group originally met in July, you established meeting dates through September, and we're looking at this third Thursday of the month at 4. Do you still want to keep your meeting date at that and time at that same time?
Does that work for the group?
Yeah, it's on the calendar.
Yep.
All right.
No changes.
And then I guess we will decide in November if we want to have a December meeting as well, because I know with the holidays it does get very busy.
Sure.
All right.
I'd like to invite closing comments from the committee. Anyone have any wrap-up comments they want to make, or final thoughts that you haven't gotten out?
This was a great discussion. I love it.
Yeah.
And I want to thank Andy
appreciate
for his
it, too.
facilitation.
Yeah,
I-
thank you.
I
Jim?
would like to ask, early it was mentioned that, I think it was called hemp field. Does hemp, when it's growing, have a particularly strong aroma?
According to Herb, it does.
His name's Herb.
You would get that.
I understand that. I actually am a cannabis grower. But I was just curious that it had that strong smell in the open. And I would like to suggest that the word marijuana not be used.
I'd second that.
That actually is a derogatory term.
Yep.
Based upon it coming from Mexico. It should be referred to as cannabis.
Or Mary Jane or something, yeah.
Reefer.
It's legal here in Oregon. We might as well
Yeah.
act as though it's legal.
Yeah, that's kind of the industry word.
Did I see a hand?
So awesome
Yes.
we talked about
One
that in
quick
meetings.
question. Do you have zoning in Clatsop County for marginal lands? We used to. When we did the state of Oregon.
You know, like marginally bad, you know, can't do much with it.
Yeah, it was marginal in that it wasn't great for building, it wasn't great for
Not the whole
growing, it
county.
wasn't great for
Yeah.
marginal land. There were little islands of it.
I think that's where you should build houses.
Class,
Yeah,
class 4.
that's fundamentally how some houses got to be built, because it was a rocky outcrop where you couldn't do agriculture.
Well, I'm sure my part of Lewis and Clark Valley once they scraped 3.5 inches of forest loam
Yes.
off of the blue clay, it
Yes.
is worthless. So,
I got that blue clay.
Gail, do you know the answer to that
I
question?
don't think we do we, Lisa? Because didn't you have to claim it before a certain date many, many years ago? And it's only Lane and some,
Somewhere in the middle.
yeah.
Line, marginal land, very residential.
Right,
So the agricultural land is carved out, the forest land is carved out, and they said, you've either already developed here or this is the best place to live. But yeah.
In Indiana, there is the National Agroforestry Center, and I like these blurred lines, where it does not have to be ag or forestry or open space or but you can have a environmentally sensible thing from the point of view of the muskrat, etc. It's not all an economic thing of Larry has to make X dollars or he's not in agriculture. But it's where you can ask the blue jay or whatever. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
Without objection, we can adjourn.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate the input. See you next month.
Yeehaw.
Gail is sure we're going to be back in the Boyd building, or you're not sure
Yep.
yet?
I'm glad to have
I'm
you.
trying
Yeah.
to find a spot
Good
for
to
the
get your
October
input
meeting.
and get some.
Because
Coming
Boyd
all the
is
way from the
booked,
inner
flag
county.
room is booked.
Heck, it's
Everything's
this big, we need
How
more
long is
room.
it?
Yeah, it's not that big.
I think where would be a good spot?
But then eventually we'll get back to the point. But I was waiting to make sure that you wanted to stay on this day and time.
Yeah.
Before I for the next.
Maybe the red building?
It's a worthwhile topic.
October, we'll go ahead to the forest factory.
And I'm
So,
just
yeah,
wondering,
participate in agricultural tax, we should have by the 4 November.
Long time no see.
Yeah, no kidding.